My guess is he's going back to the NFL. And I think one of the biggest reasons is you mentioned it, who he lost that Super Bowl to. Not only has his brother won a Super Bowl, he won it against him.
Yeah.
So my guess is having won his national championship, having gotten that Ohio State bear off of his back for the last few years, I think he's going to take another shot at the highest level. He wants to lift the Lombardi trophy. So I think he's going to be back in the NFL. Now, which one of those teams is it going to be? My guess is that it would be the Raiders or be the Commanders, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think he's done at Michigan. He's accomplished everything. He's been there 9-10 years. He's won big. It didn't start off all that great in the beginning. In fact, he took a pay cut because people were just like the khakis and spending this type of money for a guy to run the sidelines in khakis wasn't quite getting it done. Famous alums that played in Michigan was a little upset. Then the moment that Urban Meyer stepped down, everything flipped for him at Michigan.
Yep.
He accomplished that goal of winning the national championship and bringing Michigan back to some sort of relevancy in college football. Now you look at it and you say, Skip, okay, so now what? The National Football League. He's accomplished it in college. There's only two other guys that I think of off the top of my head. Pete Carroll did it, Barry Switzer did it, and Jimmy Johnson. So there's three coaches that won national championships and Super Bowl rings. He can be a guy that's won a national championship, and we saw what he did with the San Francisco 49ers.
Yep.
To now go and take a team like, if, for instance, the Chargers. Now, I don't know the Belichick situation in New England, what's going to happen there. Will Belichick become a guy that the Chargers are all of a sudden very, very interested in? But you got the Chargers sitting there with a quarterback. We know that Jim Harbaugh can coach quarterbacks. We've seen that, whether it was Andrew Luck, whether it was Alex Smith or Kaepernick, whatever the case is, we've seen that part. Then you look at the Washington Commanders, much like Robert mentioned. That'll be a hot and heavy situation for them. Now, as far as the Raiders go, it's cool that he hired Don Yee, who represents Tom Brady and Sean Payton and a host of other prominent NFL players and coaches. But in the end, Mark Davis can't listen to Tom Brady about Jim Harbaugh. Mark Davis has got to listen to the pulse of the team in the locker room when it comes to the Raiders. And I know you're saying, here's a guy who took a team to the Super Bowl, and here's a guy who has only 9 games under his belt as a head coach.
Yep.
But those players in that locker room in Las Vegas want AP. Yeah. So you got to be careful. Wouldn't it be interesting? Wouldn't it be interesting, though, if the Raiders hired Harbaugh, Skip, and all of a sudden the Chargers said, let's interview Antonio Pierce and hire him.
And they
oh, my God. You talk about a rivalry and some stuff that will go on in L.A. That'll be fun to watch.
Are you sure Harbaugh would be interested in the Chargers ownership, which has not been all that stable over the years?
Well, wherever he goes, he's going to get full control. So he's going to have full control.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think he doesn't make that move unless he has that kind of control. And we know how important that can be. But how it went south, obviously, for Bill Belichick, and that's something that we've heard over the last day or so with the speculation. And we called their game against the Jets on Sunday, and there were the reports that there would be some sort of separation, whether that was him stepping down or some sort of trade. But we've heard from him, which is a little bit rare, right? We don't hear from Bill Belichick a lot in these press conferences with the local media, being so open about, hey, he would do whatever it takes to make statements like that publicly. To me, it sounds like, there were some conversations going on. But yeah, I think Jim Harbaugh, he knows that he would want a situation where he does have that kind of control.
Okay, so you guys might be right about everything you just said about Jim leaving for pro football. And I reiterate, the NCAA is continuing to investigate Jim, so he might want to be one step ahead of the NCAA law right out the door.
Pete Carroll.
Yeah, or back to Ron Meyer at SMU when he took the New England head coaching job. Okay. Now, I'm going to read you quickly something Jim said after the game last night that resonated with me and opened my eyes a little wider. If we could show this quote. Jim said last night, but someday when they throw dirt over the top of me, if somebody who is eulogizing me, who was on this team or one of my teammates when I was playing at Michigan, if they would simply say he was a Michigan man, that would mean everything. So heart and soul, Jim's presence at Michigan is everything to him and to his father, who coached under Bo Schembechler, who obviously coached Jim at Michigan. Jim played at Michigan at quarterback. This is just a gut feeling on my part that if Jim can work around the fact that they made him, as Keyshawn pointed out, take a pay cut back, 6 years ago. He got off to a rocky start. Ohio State was just beating the dog out of him. What were some of those scores? 42-13, 62-39, Ohio State. But once they, as you point out, once Urban was gone and he took it over, now he's won 3 straight against Robert School. Well, who's to say that Jim isn't looking at Michigan as a potential dynasty, as a potential beyond Bear Bryant, maybe beyond Nick Saban, where he could stay there and make a career out of it and win, who knows, 2, 3, 4 more national championships over the next 10 or so years that he would want to continue to coach into his 70s. That's just me. I think heart of hearts, his heart is in Ann Arbor more than it would be in Los Angeles.
Yeah, but
I think it's his head again. For me, it's the Jim Harbaugh mentality. Conquer what's out there yet to be conquered.
Yeah.
And having gotten to the pinnacle of the sport in the championship game and having lost to his brother.
Exactly.
To me, that says everything. And it's nothing mean. We talked about this already. This is where he got Mike McDonald and Jesse Minter. He got him from his brother, even though his brother said, the Mike McDonald thing worked out too good. I need him back. But to me, you can still say he's a Michigan man. You can still say that, he won the national championship for Michigan. He played for Michigan. They can throw dirt over him and say he was a Michigan man if he goes back to the NFL and tries to win a Lombardi trophy. So to me, until he definitively says it, we've seen in the past, obviously, with Nick Saban when he was with the Dolphins and he said, he was going to be at Alabama. I haven't heard him say that yet. I did hear in his post-game comments or maybe an interview, he said something about getting ready for spring ball, but that's natural, right? He's going to say something like that.
No.
Until he definitively says, I am back here coaching the Wolverines next year, I won't believe it, because I think he's too much of a competitor to leave that unfinished business at the National Football League level.
Okay.
Losing to his brother in the Super Bowl, being this close to...
By the way, it came down to a controversial non-call on what should have been pass interference on Michael Crabtree.
Close to winning the Lombardi, like Doc Smith says. But in the end, the ultimate goal for guys like... He's given Michigan 14, 15 years of his life, meaning as a player and as a coach. He doesn't have to worry about being a Michigan man. He is a Michigan man, period. Robert's an Ohio State guy. I'm a USC guy, no matter what we do. But the ultimate goal is to be able to walk around and say you won a Super Bowl. It's a little different than the national championship because unlike Nick Saban, when he decided to leave LSU and go to Miami, Robert, Harbaugh has success in the National Football League. A lot of it.
Yeah.
And was that close. Nick Saban didn't have any success.
No.
He was like, I got to get back to college. He's already won a national championship last night.
Yeah.
So now the goal is to go to the pros. But here's the key. He's interviewed in the past, too, Skip, for jobs.
Sure.
Whether it was the Broncos, whether it was Chicago or Minnesota, and he's got none of them. So does it mean, or are we so far ahead of it that we just think that these teams are going to want to just hire him and say, here, or do they just want to interview him?
He's the hottest coach in the world right now because he just won the national championship.
But remember, everything has got to align.
Yeah.
You can't just take a job. The owners have got to see eye to eye and understand everything that you want to do to set your program up. He's got it perfect at Michigan. Why would he go take a job in Carolina? For what?
Well, that's a fact. Okay. All right. So,
hey, well, that's a. I think that one's a different conversation, though. I think that there are situations that would be good enough for him, but I think you're absolutely right. I mean, he's going to want to get the pinnacle, reach the pinnacle of professional sports. It's a different set of challenges, right? But he understands those challenges much better. But I think it is interesting. Like, we talk about who hot coaching candidates are. None of that matters until they sit in the room with that GM, with that owner, and they talk through whether they want that player. We can say everybody in the world is a hot candidate, but until that ownership group and that GM, that organization says, yes, we believe he's our guy, then nothing else happens. But I think because of the success that he's already had at that level, what he's learned, what he's demonstrated by what changes he made at Michigan, again, I think that was big. That was key. And any coaches or any organizations, that thought that he was a coaching candidate before would certainly believe that he is now.
Okay. Remember, he was drafted out of Michigan to play quarterback for the Chicago Bears. So would he have some heart in Chicago? That's another organization that I know very well with shaky ownership at the top. It's always you're never sure who's.
It's not available yet, though.
Yeah. Well, but I'm just saying.
We just pushed Eberflus out the door.
We're not available yet, Skip.
I'm just saying, if he's available, they might be interested.
If he's available, it might become available. Got it.
That is true. All right. To me, the strongest ownership group, the most cerebral group, the one that I fear the most as a Dallas Cowboy lifelong diehard fan is the one in Washington, because Josh Harris is serious business. He's obviously got serious money, but that's not the point. He has serious brain power. He's brought in Magic Johnson. He's brought in Bob Myers, obviously with NBA connections, but they're smart. They're going to have high sports IQ running that franchise. And even though it's in a city where Jim has no real connections, I will bet you they would make a big run at him, because they would say he's our kind of guy. He's smart, high football IQ. And remember, Jim just pulled off a great coaching job, because 24/7 Sports ranks Michigan's talent, if you combine, signees, high school signees plus portal, it was only the 15th best group of talent in the country this year. So he did it. He's a great coach. I don't think anybody have any issue with how great a coach he is.
No, not at all. He's a hell of a coach.
And I'm sorry, Rick Spielman as well. We brought Rick Spielman in, to make that evaluation. And I think, to your point, Skip, taking talent that isn't necessarily the highest level and converting that talent, molding that talent into a championship team. It's almost the same thing that he did at Stanford, right? I mean, you remember those days, Key, when he was out in the Pac-12. I mean, going against the USCs of the world and all these talented teams, Oregons, and be able to do it his way. Now, look, you can only do so much of that National Football League level. We've seen some examples of that. I mean, the Ravens, even though, bringing in Todd Monken this year, gone to more of a passing attack, and they got rid of Greg Roman, who had been the offensive coordinator there at San Francisco. We see in Tennessee, Vrabel has tried to institute those offensive line, defensive line kind of teams, and that's worked to limited success, although, they've been hamstrung for a number of different reasons. But the point of it is, we've seen Jim Harbaugh take second-level talent and turn it into championship-level football. And I think that is what is going to impress these organizations the most.
I saw him elevate Colin Kaepernick in mid-season and replace Alex Smith, the first pick in the draft, with Colin. He put him on the map. I mean, he gave him his shot.
Yeah, there's no denying his ability to recognize talent and his ability to coach the talent that he recognizes. Yeah. And it fits what he wants to do, whether it was at Stanford or San Francisco or even here at Michigan. So the jobs are available, and he should probably take a look at one.
He just well might. Robert, we love you. We appreciate you.
Just real quick, last thing I was going to say, the example again, getting rid of Don Brown, bringing in Mike McDonald, going to Jesse Minter, that also demonstrates that he knows how to evaluate the talent of coaches, which I think is the most important part when you're talking about the NFL, because you're going to acquire the talent. The talent is going to be somewhat level, but can you evaluate those coaches and realize the system that you have in place? Is it best for the players that you have? So that's a big part of it as well.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, Undisputed fans. Do you want more highlights from the show? Make sure to click that subscribe button for all the exclusive content from Undisputed.